Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, I'm going to be showing off 4 different multi-classes that I set up and tested at endgame. I will not be showing footage of the endgame combat though, don't worry. And I also kept in mind how they would work throughout the leveling process if you just wanted to keep it consistent from the start of your playthrough. I hope that this video inspires you to test out some of the multi-classing options and have some fun for yourself. And if you're looking for tips on how to multi-class, what are the do's and don'ts, and what are some of the best classes to multi-class with, I already have a video talking about that available in the cards right here. So let's get into it. Now keep in mind that these examples are not going to be specifically the strongest thing in the world. A lot of these will just be very fun, except a couple of them which I think are actually good. All right, we're starting off with a very flavorful build, and that is the Oathbreaker Warlock. So because of how Warlock scales, you don't want to start with Warlock, you would start with the Paladin. You get Strength as your base, as you can see. If you start on Warlock, you get Strength 8 and Charisma 17, but if you start on a Paladin, you get Strength 17 and Charisma 15, so it's actually a really good combination. Now, the flavor behind this class is the idea that you were a Paladin with an oath, and then you decided to break your oath, and by breaking your oath, you go into that dark path, and you broke it by making a deal with the devil. When it comes to your fighting style, you can choose whatever you want, depending on what you actually want to do. Dueling is fun if you want to pretend to be Will, but I think great weapon fighting is pretty awesome. You can choose whatever spells you want, whatever you think is going to be the most useful. A heal is always good in a pinch, but then again, so are things like Searing Smite or Bless, so it really depends on you. Now, if you were doing this from the start of the game, I would recommend that you switch to Warlock immediately so that you can get Eldritch Blast. I am not doing it at this point. You're going to leave Warlock at 3 in any case, and since it doesn't matter, let's just go ahead and put our points into Warlock. So you can choose this. It's gonna affect only what you have here because you're not really going to get anything more than that. If you're looking for damage and armor, the Fiend is the one that you kind of want. So at level 2 of Warlock, you get to choose a spell. Again, you can choose whichever you want. If you want to continue with the fantasy, you can go for Hellish Rebuke and kind of be that paladin that stands in the middle, and you get a counter technically with this. Or you can go Burning Hands. It really doesn't matter. It's whatever is up, whatever you prefer. And then for Eldritch Invocations, you can choose whatever you want. I recommend Repelling Blast and either Thief of the 5 Fates. Beguiling Influence if you want that for the roleplay and for the conversation parts. But I take Devil's Sight because Dark Vision is always useful. And then on the 3rd level, you're going to choose either Pact of the Blade or Pact of the Chain. So you choose your level 2 Warlock spell. This will be your strongest one. I would recommend the Cloud of Daggers. It's always very strong. And really, it depends on if you want to have a familiar or if you want to have the extra damage on your weapon, but you're going to get extra attack from being a paladin, so I am going to take familiar because I'm going to be using the imp mainly. And from here, you just go straight up as a paladin, make your paladinial decisions on whatever you want, including whatever your devotion is. You then obviously want to break your oath. I'm not gonna break my oath to demo this because that'll take me some time with where I am in the game. So in an attempt to avoid spoilers, I can't really show any combat encounters with this build. I did do a specific house, let's say, with some of these builds to just check how good they were. This one is undoubtedly the one that did the best. So you have your imp, of course, which can do things. I actually think this build is a little stronger with the Blade Pact, but there's just a lot going on with it. So firstly, you have your concentration magic weapon to increase your damage. You have your Lay on Hands to provide healing. You also have just a ton of spells for utility, but specifically, the ones that I think are really important are Armor of Agathis, so you can just tank more on the front lines. Divine Smite and well, all the smites are pretty good. You have Healing for utility. Moonbeam and Cloud of Daggers are actually really good within your level 2 slots for controlling a little bit of space within a fight. You have a ton of spell slots thanks to the fact that you have the Warlock spell slots as well. It just grants you so much flexibility. On top of that, you have Eldritch Blast, of course, at the end of the day. Always useful, and if you took the Repulsor one, You'll see here that even though I'm a level 3 warlock, I get my 3 eldritch blasts, and they also have a chance to push people away. Great for throwing people off of ledges or just gaining a little bit of space, ruining people who are pressuring you with opportunity attacks because of the position you're in. It's really a very strong build. Once again, I think that with the Pact of the Blade, it's better, but for early game, I would say that the Conjured Imp is a better thing, so you want to go Pact of the Chain. I don't think that Pact of the Tome is that useful in general. It kind of doesn't scale well at all. But yeah, this class, really strong. If I were actually an Oathbreaker, I mean, it's more for the flavor than anything. The build would still work more or less the same. It's really good. I strongly recommend you try it out. You do wear heavy armor, which is awesome. And depending on how you kit out everything with the items that you build this with, you're going to find some really, really good results. Onwards onto my actual favorite class, you're going to need to use invisibility for this, but if you specifically went the Dark Urge and are therefore, you have this little cape here, this is broken. This is absolutely one of the strongest builds you can do. Now, the actual monk you pick is not that important. I personally like Elemental Monk if I had to pick one, but all three of them are valid. The most logical one would definitely be going Way of the Shadow, because we're going to be combining this to become a rogue as well, and a lot of the things that you get with Way of the Shadow allow you to take advantage of stealth and the shadows more. But as a hybrid class, it works really well with Way of the Open Hand and with Way of the Four Elements. I like using a big mace or another bludgeoning object, so I normally go with Elemental. You can pick out whichever spells you like the most, as per usual. I'm going to be replacing a lot of this later on, so it doesn't really matter much. So if you were doing this early on, I would recommend that you stay this path for a while. You can pick whichever ones you want. Tough, for example, always an excellent feat to take. And you want to stay because, as usual, you get extra attack at level 5, and stunning strikes are absolutely spectacular. The ability to stun, especially if you have one main foe that is really strong and can maybe wipe your entire party in a turn, just keeping them stunned is really, really strong. So there at level 5 is maybe where I would recommend that you switch to Rogue after you have extra attack, even if it's just for one level, so that you can get Sneak Strike. And what you are going to do after that, you get into Rogue, and you're going to see now that I get Action Hide. Well, I get all my cunning actions, and I also got Acrobatics and Sleight of Hand. And now as a Rogue level 3, I can take either Thief for gaining an additional bonus action, or I can take Assassin. Assassin is my preference. You get these 3 passives that I discussed in the breakdown of all of the classes, and they are just really strong for you to hide in the shadows and assassinate somebody in just one hit. If you really want to keep the flavor, you want to go Shadow Monk, but it's really up to you. And then you would spec the rest of your points into Monk as you normally would. Of course, you can be flexible with all of this. You can just take 1 point in Rogue. Monks max out at 11, truthfully, except for that feat at level 12. So you can take that last level as Rogue, and you can take it at any point in time to get those sneak attacks and to get those critical hits, and it will do wonders. And at this point, we would swap this out, and we would take either Clench of the North Wind or Gong of the Summit. Fist of the Four Thunders has actually come in clutch a couple times for me. But yeah, you can pick whatever you want. You can pick whatever feat you want. So, of course, this all benefits because this is our main stat on both of them. And this build actually gets kind of crazy because there are certain items in the game. This is a variation on the build that I actually ran throughout the game. If we go over to my stat sheet, you'll see that I actually have 18 strength. And that's because there are items in this game that just will set whatever you have all the way up to a certain stat. So even though we had 12 strength there, now I have 18 strength. And, you know, those sorts of things. If you really want to get deep into it, keep in mind that there are items that you can perfectly respec an entire build around items that will grant you these sorts of benefits. Fortunately, now we can't run this heavy armor, so we would go back to clothing. Almost showed a spoiler. The only benefit that we're really going to miss out on is how far we move. This is not as far as we would normally move, and I do have equipped a ring that gives me more movement, but a monk at level 10 would move even farther. It's just you can just run across the entire battlefield, but that is also very relative, since there are many skills later on in the game that will allow you go completely crazy with movement, so don't worry too much about it. Now, this is my personal favorite. It's very dumb, and it's a mixture of Ranger and Druid, so we want to start off with Ranger, since that's going to give us the closest stats, and we're going to just match Wisdom and Dex later on. But we start with a Ranger that is also, it doesn't matter much, you're really just changing your proficiencies on your weapons. We're not going to be using weapons, so it doesn't really matter. We only care about the stats. So I was saying, now that we're a Ranger, we can pick whatever spells we think are good and cool for our class. We can pick our fighting style. I'm going to take 2-weapon fighting. We're not going to be spending a lot of time fighting, because we are actually going Beastmaster, because this is the Beastmaster class, which I think is not very good. Fog Cloud is actually quite useful here. It's not actually very good, but it is hilarious. Now, this is not a very optimized class, but here at this point, we're just going to switch over to Druid. But we are not going to go Circle of the Land. No. We are going to go Circle of the Moon. Again, you pick whatever spells you think are useful. There's just a ton of flexibility when you start putting casters into your multi-classing builds. And we really want to level Druid at least until 6, because we really want Wild Strike. So we want to make an additional attack while we are in wild shape. After that, you can really pick or choose whichever you want. I would recommend it going to level 6 so that you can get the Owlbear and the Panther right here. So you get extra spells. These are all really, really strong spells. By the way, these are all very useful. And once you make it all the way to level 8, you can get the Saber-Tooth Tiger. You can also get another feat. You can take whatever you want, whatever you think is going to work the best for you. First of all, you really want to equip medium armor, because you don't want to actually take that much damage, especially when you are not wild shaped. But the whole point of this is that you can, as a Ranger, you have Ranger's Companion. Now, you can choose between the different ones. They all do different things, and they might be situationally useful. I think it's funny to run a bear, and then we can wild shape ourselves into whatever we want. Of course, we have a bear, we have an owlbear, we have the saber-tooth tiger, we have all of these things. Double bear is funny. The whole point of this build is that now you're a beast and also a beast master, which is just really funny. It's gonna allow you to just smack some people around. You can also pump a little bit more into Ranger instead of going for this. I would recommend maybe leaving Druid at 6 and pumping Ranger up to 6 as well, to kind of have an even split. The whole joke of this is that instead of being a Ranger whose biggest downside is that a lot of your power is put into your beast, you just make yourself a beast as well. Again, more of a joke thing, but I actually do intend to go into battle with 4 beast tamers, 4 beast masters, so that it's just 8 animals running wild, and I think that's really funny. This does actually work not terribly. You have a lot of flexibility with the animals that you can choose in both aspects, and of course, the whole point of this as a druid with medium armor is that once you lose your wild shape, if you get knocked out of wild shape during combat, you're still going to be fairly tanky to be able to take things, and if you specifically go very hard on the druid aspect of this, you're going to have quite a nice selection of strong spells that you can use. So quite a lot of stuff here in the 4th level slot. You got a Wall of Fire, you have Blight, You have Conjure Woodland Being if you really wanted to. And of course you have Ice Storm. That's a signature thing. I'm sure a lot of people liked seeing that at a specific moment in the story. So you kind of fluctuate between going into wild shape to tank, and then when you're out of wild shape, you just rain down as much damage as you can with your magic, and then you go back into wild shape, and meanwhile, hopefully you're getting plenty of utility out of your other beast. There's plenty of ways to optimize this with items as well. It's just funny, so go for it if you're interested. So the next build on my list is actually real and works quite well, which is a Wizard Necromancer Barbarian. The reason this works is for the same reason I said before. We have an item that is going to pump our strength up to 18, so it's going to compensate for how absolutely terrible wizards are when it comes to their strength stat, as you can see with a strength of just 8. But that's going to go up real quick. So instead of Abjuration, we're going to go over here. We're going to choose Necromancy. We're going to choose a couple of spells. You can really spec this into either utility or damage or whatever you want. But don't worry, plenty of damage is going to come from your Barbarian side. Then we're going to select some spells. We just keep cruising through. You can stop at any point, but I mean, you want to be able to summon some minions, right? So we don't want to put anything into strength because that's going to be fixed at 18 for some of the HP that we're going to be missing, like tough. And finally, we get access to Animate Dead, along with spells like Fireball, which are just really strong. And here we go. At level 6, we're going to get Undead Thralls. So you can raise an additional corpse with Animate Dead. And you also get better summons, as well as Animate Dead 2. You also get 2 spells. You can choose, again, whatever you want. I mean, who doesn't want Flight, right? And of course, the distribution of when you take which levels is really up to you. But it is important that this build really peaks once you reach level 5 on the Barbarian. We are not going Wildheart. We are going Berserker, so that we have Frenzy to just smack people around for a total of 3 hits if we only go for melee. But if we are enraged, sacrificing the fact that we need to keep hitting things to stay enraged, we can definitely cast spells and then smack people just the same. We can take whatever feat we want here, or we can just pump stats if we really wanted to. Constitution and Dexterity are actually not bad. And once we reach level 11 here, we get our extra attack and fast movement. So the penalty that we have with this is that we are not proficient with any armor. So actually taking mage armor is not a bad idea with the build like this. But what we do have, 3 level 3 spell slots. Well, we have just a bunch of spell slots that are going to be quite flexible with some really strong things. We can't actually animate anything here, but you know, you would animate the actual undead. And then once you have your animated undead, if you entered combat, I can't actually demonstrate, but you could go into rage and you could, for example, throw some fireballs and then go into Frenzied Strike. And you also just have that Barbarian ability to smack once, smack twice, and then do a Frenzied Strike. While your skeletons are doing things, we have 116 HP. Our armor class is up to 16 from taking Constitution, and you can always kit all of this out. Our mace is hitting pretty damn hard, but it's most importantly, it's giving us a ton of strength, as you can see. So this one is dependent on gear. It's a good example of how builds can come out of gear that you obtain. And it's just a really cool build. I like the idea of this menacing barbarian that's just summoning some undead to fight by his side. So you have that pet advantage, and pets are really strong in this game. And you also are a force to be reckoned with yourself. So those are the 4 classes that I've come up with. I have some other crazy content coming up pretty soon. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to hit the like button. If you're looking forward to that content, not only about Baldur's Gate 3, but about all the video games coming out this year, then make sure to subscribe. I've been Mug Thief, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the internet.